So what mask did you walk in here with today? What tales did you construct about your life and who you are as you walked out the door, knowing this was where you were heading? Because the tales we tell about ourselves are indeed those things that construct the masks that we wear in our lives. Some of those stories are stories we've inherited from our families that are hard to shake. That we talk too much, we're too fat or too skinny, we don't listen. Some of the tales we tell are tales that we have created. Tales that both hide and reveal portions of who we are. But those tales and those masks, as Patrick referred to them as icons of the imagination, they can become idols as opposed to icons. The 20th century author Madeleine L'Engle has a text titled Penguins and Golden Calves. And she talks about this distinction between idols, the golden calves, and icons. That the idol is something that we end up forgetting that it represents something else, and instead of worshiping, whereas icons are a window to something bigger, something more true, something deeper and more mysterious, like the finger that points at the moon. If we end up looking at the finger instead of the moon, the Chinese proverb says we are imbeciles. I say we're like my dog, but you get the picture. All of us have stories we tell about ourselves, these masks that we wear that prepare us for the world. And not just individually, but families have stories. Communities have stories. Grand Rapids has a story it's telling about itself. This church has a story it is telling about itself. How much of it is iconic and how much of it is idolatry? How much of the story about the truth of Grand Rapids is iconic, pointing to a larger, more expansive and mysterious truth? And how much is idolatrous? Churches have stories, workplaces have stories, nations have stories, and they shape the way we see. I think we've experienced in the last presidential election a shift in the story of our nation, what we're saying about what is possible to have a person of color elected to our presidency. Now that doesn't change everything, and if we cling tightly to that, it will become an idol, and further change will be even more difficult. But that story is shifting about what is possible here. Just as we see stories shifting around the world with revolutions, what are the stories you are telling, and which ones are essential, and which ones can you cast off? This celebration prior to the Lenten season, this carnival, is a farewell to the flesh, carnevale, farewell to meat. It reflects the fasting that occurs during the Lenten season, a fasting that, far from necessarily being about encountering the suffering of Jesus, can also be about reenacting his journey into the wilderness to discover who you are and what you are called to do in this world. This farewell to flesh is not about denying the body as bad. It's about saying, what are the unnecessary things that have piled up on me? Stripping away the fatted flesh, getting to the bone skeleton of the story of who you are. And then, when you put on a mask, doing it intentionally and knowing it is a choice. We all choose to wear masks at times. We have to keep ourselves safe. If every person enslaved had ever voiced those feelings that Dunbar hides behind the mask, how many would have died? How many would have survived? Yes, the numbers that suffered are great. And yet the mask is a form of coping. The mask is something that gets us through unspeakable times in our lives. But knowing it is a mask, knowing that you can choose to change the tale you are telling about yourself, that you can choose to change the tale that you are telling about your family, your world, and that the choices of the tales that you choose to tell shape how you suffer and how you are seen. During this Lenten season, I invite you, I challenge you to examine with intent the masks that you wear. As parent, as partner, as spouse. Examine the masks of class and gender and race, of privilege or oppression. Examine the masks that you wear when you walk out the door to go to church because you think you have to be a certain way to fit in even here. And then choose. Choose the masks you will wear. Dance in the street. Find the mask that gives you joy and courage. Welcome into Lent, my friends. Come along for the ride.